She moved quietly past the sleeping helicopters like she was just part of the background. But when a breeze lifted her collar, a soldier nearby froze. Not because of who she was, but because of what he saw. A mark he hadn't seen in decades. Just a shape to most, but to one old sergeant it hit like a bullet to the chest. He froze. That mark, she's not just a mechanic. But she didn't look back. Claire Jensen kept walking like always. Before we dive in, have you ever been overlooked only to prove everyone wrong without saying a word? Yes, I still remember. Not yet, but maybe someday. Today, we meet a woman who fixed aircraft with bare hands and carried memories no one else dared to touch. But before the truth took flight, she spent years in silence. And in that silence, a legend was waiting. The desert wind carried the smell of hot oil dust and jet fuel. Somewhere a windsock flapped lazily, pointing southeast toward the open sky. At the far end of Fort Rains, between hangars and chain-link fences, a woman bent over the undercarriage of an Apache. Face shaded by a worn ball cap, coveralls rolled at the sleeves, hands smudged with grease. Most days, no one noticed her. Claire Jensen had worked here nearly 5 years. A civilian contractor on paper, maintenance tech by assumption. Pilots walked past her without a glance. She kept to herself, always had. There was a quiet to her movements, like she was doing more than just fixing bolts, like she was listening to the machine breathe. No one asked how she knew which birds needed attention before a diagnostic report even came in. No one questioned why she could pull apart a gearbox blindfolded or spot a stress crack by sound alone. To them, she was the quiet one. Wrench girl, a ghost in navy blue. But if they'd looked closer, they might have seen the way she touched the rotor blades, not as a technician, but as someone who once danced in the sky with them. One young pilot joked once loud enough for her to hear, if she keeps hanging around the sim bay, someone should hand her a joystick and a juice box. The others laughed. Claire didn't flinch. Just adjusted her torque wrench and tightened the last bolt without looking up. That night, as the hangar lights dimmed and shadows stretched across the concrete, Claire remained at her workstation. Everyone else had gone home. On her bench sat a sealed tin of bolts, a cup of black coffee, and a tiny brass compass, chipped and faded, the kind given to Army cadets decades ago. It had belonged to her father. She didn't bring it for nostalgia. She brought it to remind herself of direction not in miles, but in purpose. On the wall behind her, a single metal chair sat beside a folded wool blanket. No one ever sat there. That chair was his. She never spoke of him, but sometimes when the air was still and the whirring fans in the hangar had wound down, she'd glance at that chair just once, and something softened in her shoulders. There were no photos on her locker, no calls during lunch breaks. But inside her toolbox, wrapped in oilcloth, was a small photograph bent at the corners. A man in uniform. A girl beside him, maybe 12. Her smile wide. His arm draped over her shoulders. She didn't open it often. Didn't need to, because some things stay stitched into the skin long after the picture fades. Outside, another group of flight school grads strutted past. They carried their swagger like armor. They hadn't earned the sky yet, but they spoke like they owned it. "Think she even knows what a collective is," one of them muttered. Claire didn't answer. She just stood, wiped her hands, and walked back toward the flight sim building. As she passed the old vending machine by the glass doors, a flower pot caught her eye. Someone had planted a single sprig of lavender in it last week. Today it had bloomed. Claire paused, leaned in just a little, inhaled. Then, with a tiny motion barely anyone saw, she turned the pot 5 degrees to the left to catch more light from the afternoon sun. No one noticed, but that was Claire. She never spoke loudly, never fought for attention, never asked for recognition. And yet, the birds she touched flew longer. The engines she repaired rarely failed. And when she walked past some pilots, just a few lowered their voices. They didn't know why. Not yet, but they would. Because sometimes a legend doesn't roar into the room. Sometimes she just keeps showing up, until the sky remembers her. Inside the sim chamber, fluorescent lights buzzed above wide humming screens. Major Hollis leaned over a monitor reviewing footage with a hotshot trainee Burke, the kind of pilot who believed confidence was better than competence. They were still laughing when the door opened. Claire stepped in quietly, hands clasped behind her back. No badge, no appointment. Requesting sim time, she said. Hollis looked up slowly, expression unreadable. You're not on the schedule. I'm qualified, she replied. He smirked. Not according to your file. She didn't argue, just stood there. Burke leaned back in his chair, amused. Let her try, sir. Be fun to watch the wrench girl nosedive into a canyon. Hollis hesitated. Curiosity edged out protocol. Fine. 2 minutes. Solo sim, 5 targets, no brief. Let's see what you've got. Claire stepped into the pod without a word. The door hissed shut behind her. Burke chuckled under his breath. Bet she crashes before liftoff. But then the sim lit up. The digital Apache powered on not in bursts or panic, but with practiced control. She eased throttle-calibrated pitch and lifted smoothly. No hesitation. At 80 feet, she tilted nose down and dove low, hugging the virtual terrain. Radar masking, elevation control, signal suppression. Burke's smile faded. She's flying dark, no signal, no sound. Major Hollis leaned in. That's not training. That's muscle memory from a war room. Targets appeared on screen, 5 enemy units spread across canyon ridges. Claire didn't slow. She pivoted on instinct, loosing a burst of guided fire. 2 targets down, then 3. Every maneuver was clean, efficient, without ego. When the final explosion faded, the screen dimmed. 1 minute and 43 seconds. 5 kills, 0 errors. The pod opened. Claire stepped out. Face blank. Expression still. Like she'd just finished tightening a bolt, not eliminating 5 enemies in a live fire sim. No victory pose, no smirk, just that same stillness. Hollis stared. Where did you train? I didn't, she said softly. I just never forgot how. Then she walked out like someone who'd never really left. For a moment, no one moved. Then Burke spoke again, but this time not to mock. He pointed. Wait, her neck. Did you see it? Hollis followed his gaze. Just beneath the edge of her collar, damp with sweat, a tattoo. Simple. Black. A stylized dagger flanked by 2 rotor blades. Burke stepped back. I've only seen that mark once, he murmured. It's not in any army registry. It's Joint Ops. Blackbird units. Deep compartment. Hollis didn't respond. Not out loud. But later that night he made a call. Used a line that required 2 levels of clearance. Gave a name. A time, a call sign. There was a long pause on the other end. Then a single word. Still alive. He looked out the window. Down on the tarmac, Claire moved between aircraft with her usual quiet. But something about her posture had changed just slightly. Shoulders straighter, steps more deliberate. And as Hollis watched her vanish into the shadow of Hangar 4, he realized something no simulation could ever teach. She wasn't trying to prove anything. She was remembering who she was, and if that was true, then Fort Raines hadn't just found a mechanic. They'd just rediscovered a ghost, one that knew exactly how to fly and exactly what she was waiting for. That night, Major Hollis sat in his office long after the hallway lights had dimmed. The base quieted into the soft hum of distant turbines and the occasional screech of metal contracting in the desert cold. But something about Claire Jensen's flight stayed with him. Not just the precision, but the silence. No wasted moves, no panic, no celebration. It wasn't confidence, it was memory. He opened her personnel file again. Nothing remarkable. Civilian contractor. Prior service, no active combat record, no deployment stamps, no medals, no unit patch. But that tattoo, it didn't come from an artsy parlor or a drunken dare. It came from a place few dared speak of, a ghost unit, one so deeply embedded in classified joint operations that even its call signs were redacted. He picked up the phone and called an old friend, Colonel Ezra Grant, retired now but once the commanding officer for Tier 1 aviation assets overseas. When Hollis mentioned the tattoo, there was a pause. Then, did it look like a blade in motion? Yes. And flanked by dual rotors downward tilt? Exactly. Another pause. You just saw a ghost knife. Hollis exhaled slowly. I think I saw one still breathing. The next morning, the mood at Fort Raines had shifted subtle but real. Whispers moved through mess halls and maintenance bays. No one had seen Claire that day. Her tools were laid out organized as always, but untouched. Then, just after 9 a.m., she returned carrying a folded file taped at the edges yellow with time. She entered Hollis's office without knocking. I heard you made a call, she said simply. He didn't deny it. I had to, he replied. That wasn't normal sim behavior. Claire stood in silence for a moment. Then, with measured care, she placed the folder on his desk. He opened it slowly. Inside, a discharge certificate, honorable, decorated, but redacted in entire sections. Alongside it, a letter with no insignia, no header. Just a signature in blue ink he didn't recognize, and a serial code that triggered a military-grade authentication protocol. At the back, a photo. Claire, almost 10 years younger. Flight suit, dust on her boots, standing beside a black-painted Apache with no tail number. You flew with the 109th. Hollis whispered. She nodded once. Until we didn't exist anymore. He looked up. Why come back as a mechanic? Claire took a breath. Outside, a training bird thundered overhead, momentarily rattling the windows. I needed to be near the sky, she said. But I wasn't sure I deserved to fly again. Hollis didn't speak. He couldn't. Claire's eyes drifted to the side of the room. On a filing cabinet sat a cracked mug with a faded logo, Raines Aviation Est, 1964. She smiled faintly. I used to drink from that same mug 10 years ago. Different base, different logo, but the feeling was the same. Then her voice softened. There's a kind of comfort in fixing things no one else notices. You can put things right, quietly. Hollis nodded slowly. You know this changes everything. No, Claire replied. It doesn't change me. She turned to leave, then paused at the doorway. My father always told me, you don't need to wear wings to earn them. She glanced over her shoulder, her voice quieter. I just needed time to believe that again. Later that afternoon, Staff Sergeant Diaz walked into the tool bay looking for Claire. She wasn't there. But on the bench next to a wrench wiped clean and set perfectly square lay a folded oilcloth. Inside it, a compass, old and chipped. And beneath it, a sticky note written in her neat engineer's script. Still flying, just different altitude. CJ. That night, someone cleaned the chair beside the wool blanket for the first time in years. No one sat in it, but they all understood who it was for. And though Claire had not yet taken flight again, something at Fort Raines had already lifted. The silence she left behind felt different now, not empty, but earned. The base sirens wailed just past noon. Short, sharp, urgent. A recon team had gone dark along the ridgeline training op turned sideways. Last transmission scrambled static and a partial distress code. Dust storm moving in. Visibility dropping. No response on standard channels. Colonel Hargrave burst into Hangar B boots hammering against concrete. Which Apache is closest to flight ready? He barked. Claire didn't flinch. Tail 07 Delta, she answered from beneath the fuselage. It's fully fueled. Systems checked this morning. I just need 10 minutes to balance her weight for the heat. He didn't look at her. I asked for a bird, not your opinion. Where's your supervisor? Off base, she replied evenly. I'm the senior tech on shift. You're not cleared for combat. Just prep the bird. I'll get someone who can fly it. Claire didn't argue. She stood, walked toward the cockpit, began running through final pre-flight as if the question of who would fly was already answered. Behind her, 2 warrant officers argued in the briefing room. One hadn't flown since winter. The other failed his last sim check under pressure. Claire glanced toward the sunlit bay doors. The light had changed harsher, flatter. the kind of light that meant someone out there was waiting to be rescued or buried. She climbed into the pilot's seat, slid the headset over her ears. Her fingers hovered over the auxiliary switch panel. They trembled just once. Then she reached beneath her collar to fasten the last restraint strap. A hint of ink peeked out. The blade, the twin rotors. And just like that, the past was no longer past. Staff Sergeant Booth was walking by when he saw it. He stopped mid-stride, eyes locked on the mark. "Ma'am," his voice dropped. "Where did you get that ink?" Claire didn't turn. "Picked it up," she said. Why Booth didn't answer. He turned and sprinted back into the colonel's office. Seconds later, Hargrave stormed out. He saw the powered-up cockpit. The checklists signed in digital ink with a call sign long since erased, Ghost Knife 6. His voice dropped rough with disbelief. "Is it true?" He stepped closer. "You flew under Draper, AG 2012. Claire didn't answer. Didn't have to. She looked out the windshield. "You need a pilot," she said. "She's ready." Hargrave froze. Then Booth whispered something words lost under the growl of the turbine. Hargrave's jaw unclenched. "Get in the damn air," he ordered. "To all units she leads. Follow her bird." The rotors spun into full motion. Dust spiraled. The other chopper scrambled to catch up. Inside the Apache, Claire moved like muscle memory was enough. No need for confirmation. No need for applause. Just need. "Form on my 6, she said into the mic. 2 ships stagger. Radio silence unless you see muzzle flashes. As they passed the foothills, the desert fell away below them. Claire dropped low. 50 feet above ground level, hugging the canyon walls. Radar couldn't follow her. Neither could fear. She spotted the recon Humvee smoke curling up behind it, half buried beneath a shale overhang. Perfect kill zone. She throttled back. Optics flared. 4 heat signatures closing fast. "Chase 1, she whispered into the private channel. "Orbit high right. Cover my egress. I'll sweep. Copy, Ghost Knife." 6 came the reply tone, changed now. No more doubt. Only discipline. Claire banked left. Cannon tracking the ridge. Short bursts precise. Measured. Surgical. Enemy combatants scattered. Not dead. Just outmatched. "Team Havoc radio check," she called. Crackling response. 2 KIA. 1 walking wounded. Tires shredded. "We're stuck. Sit tight." She flared back. The Apache hovered with rotors just breathing above the ground. Crew chief leapt, sprinted to the Humvee. Claire's eyes never left the ridge. 2 more heat signatures moving for cover, heading for a mounted gun. She pivoted. 3 shots. The truck exploded. Purple smoke bloomed. Package on board her crew called. Claire lifted collective. Rotors howled. She punched out of the valley, the chase bird following. 5 minutes later, Fort Rains shimmered in the distance. Claire let the other helicopter land first. When she touched down, the tarmac fell quiet. Mechanics, infantry, pilots, all watching. She stepped out. No swagger, no salute, just dust on her boots, heat on her skin. Hargrave approached helmet under one arm. He looked at her, at the bird, at the call sign burned into digital logs they were never meant to find. He nodded once. No ceremony, just recognition. And from the gathered silence, one truth settled like dusk. She didn't just save a team. She reclaimed the sky. The dust had barely settled on the flight line when the murmur began to ripple through Fort Rains. Mechanics looked up from engine bays. Flight officers leaned out of briefing rooms. Even the usually aloof infantry paused their drills. Something had shifted. Claire Jensen, wrench girl ghost in coveralls, had just flown an impossible mission, and returned without a scratch, without a single word of complaint. When she stepped down from the cockpit, helmet tucked under one arm, Colonel Hargrave met her at the bottom of the ladder. He stopped 2 paces short. The silence between them was heavy, but not hostile. His eyes dropped to the edge of her collar, still damp with sweat, just enough to reveal the faint ink, the mark, blade and rotors, the ghost knife. His voice softened. "I flew with one of you once. Helmand 2009. Your kind doesn't show up on rosters, but you brought my men home when no one else could." Claire met his gaze evenly. "The one who flew with you. He taught me everything I know." The colonel nodded slowly. It wasn't admiration. It was something deeper recognition. Then, turning to the crowd, his voice firm but calm. "Effective immediately, Claire Jensen is reinstated to flight status. She leads Apache operations until further notice. Anyone with objections can take it up with me." No one spoke. Burke, the once laughing pilot, looked down at his boots. The young techs who had mocked her in the sim bay shifted uncomfortably, avoiding her eyes. Sergeant Diaz, the only one who ever brought her coffee without asking why, smiled quietly to himself. Claire didn't smile. She didn't need to. Later that evening, just past 1900, a mandatory debrief was called. Inside the ready room, the air was thick with unspoken questions. Captain Ryland, second in command of the base's flight division, cleared his throat. "We've reviewed the mission footage. Pilot designation GK6. Action under live fire. 0 friendly casualties. 0 system failures, full target elimination." He turned to Claire. "You weren't authorized. You weren't cleared. But we would have lost them without you." No applause, just quiet nods, grown men adjusting their sleeves to cover goosebumps. Then, Lieutenant Corwin, fresh out of flight school, too young to know better, spoke. "What made you go up there? No one would have blamed you if you stayed back. You could have waited for approval," or Claire cut him off gently. "There was no time." He blinked. "But how did you know you could fly her, I mean?" After so long, Claire looked at him, not unkindly. "There's a moment," she said, "right before you touch the controls. Your hands remember before your mind catches up, and in that moment you either go or you don't." She paused. "I went. No more questions." Afterward, as officers filtered out, Claire remained behind, wiping down her helmet with a soft cloth. It had belonged to someone once, someone she lost. Colonel Hargrave returned holding a manila folder. "Paperwork's in motion. Full reinstatement. They want to know if you'll take a full command slot." Claire didn't look up. "I'm not here for a title, sir." He studied her for a moment. "No," he said, "but they need someone who remembers why we fly in the first place." She didn't answer, just zipped the helmet case and stood. As she walked out into the cooling desert air, a group of pilots stepped aside instinctively to make room for her path. Not forced, not formal, just respect. At the edge of the flight line, the same stray dog she'd fed scraps to over the years came trotting up. Old, scarred, loyal, she crouched down, scratched behind his ear. He leaned into her hand. "I told you," she murmured, "they'd see it eventually." And behind her the stars began to show, soft, unmoving, like they too had been watching all along. The days that followed were quiet, but not the kind of quiet people were used to. It was the kind that hummed with change, not shouted, not broadcasted, just felt deep in the bones of the base. Claire Jensen didn't move offices. She still walked the same path each morning, toolkit in hand, sleeves rolled up. But now, people moved differently around her. Slower, straighter, less performative, more attentive. In the hangar, a young recruit spilled a bin of washers. Claire knelt beside him without a word, helped him gather each one, then showed him how to stack them properly with quiet precision. "Why do you still do this?" he asked, confused. "You don't have to. You're in command now." Claire smiled faintly. "Tools don't care about rank," she said. "Neither does gravity." One evening, a group of pilots stood clustered around the mission board. They were debating routes, arguing over elevations and refuel intervals. Claire approached slowly. They fell silent. She didn't interrupt. She just listened, then stepped forward, pointed to a line drawn too tight across a ridge. "Wind patterns change at dusk. You'll be fighting crosswinds here. Widen this vector by 10 degrees. You'll clear it clean." The youngest nodded. The oldest stared at her for a long moment, then erased the line without a word and redrew it. Just like that, the plan changed. Not because she commanded it, but because she was right. Behind her locker door now hung a single item, a flight suit. Pressed, clean, untouched, but ready. Next to it, taped to the inside panel, was a faded photograph not of war or glory, but of her and her father at a county air show. She was 9. He held a paper cup of lemonade. She had grease on her nose and both hands on a flight stick. Her world had started there. Before the black ink, before the missions no one spoke about, and somehow it had led back to this. To bolts and birds. To fixing what could still fly. On Sunday morning, long before reveille, Claire walked the perimeter alone. The sky was pale, the kind of soft gray that came before a perfect sunrise. She passed the old flower pot outside the sim building, the one she'd once adjusted for more sun. Now a new flower bloomed beside the first. No one had told her who planted it. She smiled. Didn't need to know. As she stood there, she heard footsteps behind her. Colonel Hargrave. Thought I'd find you here. Claire didn't turn. Just walking. He came to stand beside her. They're calling for a new rotation lead in Pendleton, he said. You'd have your own hangar, full crew. Quiet place, close to the coast. She paused. Then, sounds peaceful. You'd take it? Claire looked out across the tarmac. A mechanic tightened bolts on the nose of an Apache. A rookie pilot paced with his checklist, rehearsing in silence. Somewhere nearby, a kettle whistled faintly in the break room. She exhaled slowly. I think I'm already where I belong. Hargrave nodded. Then I'll stop asking. As he walked away, Claire reached into her pocket, pulled out the compass her father gave her all those years ago. She clicked it open. The needle wavered, then settled. North. Still steady. Still hers. That afternoon, a new class of cadets arrived at Fort Rains. They didn't know her story. Not yet. But when one of them, a nervous young woman with calloused fingers and too tight boots, asked quietly, "Ma'am, how do I earn respect around here?" Claire. Jensen smiled. "You don't earn it," she said. "You live it. Every screw you tighten. Every time you stay late. Every time you listen more than you speak." The cadet blinked, then nodded. Claire turned back to the airframe. Same bird, same bolts. Different sky. Because sometimes redemption doesn't come with medals or rank. It comes with a sunrise, and the quiet certainty that when the sky calls again, she'll be ready. That evening, as the sun dipped low across the New Mexico desert, Claire stood alone by her Apache. The hangar lights hadn't come on yet. The tarmac glowed amber under the final wash of daylight, not blazing, but soft, like a memory. She didn't climb in. Just placed her hand gently along the fuselage fingers, brushing against the heat-warmed metal. The aircraft thrummed softly, even while still, like it remembered too. From behind her, a child's voice called out, "Miss Claire." She turned. A little girl stood at the edge of the pad, clutching a small brown paper bag. The daughter of a medic she had once flown home, bleeding, half-conscious, silent. "My dad said you like oatmeal cookies," the girl said. He baked them this time. Claire took the bag, crouched to meet the girl's eyes. "Tell him I remember," she said. "And tell him they saved the day." The girl giggled and ran off, hair bouncing behind her. Claire watched her go, then sat down at the edge of the concrete cross-legged like she had when she was a child. Opened the bag, took one cookie, broke it in half, ate slowly. Above her, the tower light blinked once, then again, like a steady breath. She looked up. The sky turned indigo soft and deep like an old soldier's memory. No jets, no noise, just stars, blinking quietly like names unspoken but never forgotten. And in that moment she felt it. Not glory, not recognition, but peace. A kind of peace only earned by doing the right thing when no one's watching and doing it again when they finally do. Some people carry their past like a burden. Claire Jensen carried hers like a compass, not to remind her where she'd been, but to guide her toward who she still wanted to be. If someone you love ever gave quietly without medals, without applause, send them this story, because quiet strength deserves to be seen. At The Human Stories, we believe in second chances. Silent strength and the quiet women who never stopped flying even when no one was watching. Thank you for being here. And until next time, keep your eyes on the sky and your heart steady on the ground.